All right, today we're going to review one-step equations before we move on to two-step equations. So if I have x plus 5 equals 20, I know some of you can work backwards, but because I'm adding 5 to undo that operation, I do the opposite, which would be subtracting 5. I would have x equals 15. Here I have x minus 6 is 3, so to undo subtracting 6, I'm going to add 6 to both sides. X equals 9. Now, if you have to check, because some questions will require it, I plug back in the 15 into my original equation. So I say 15 plus 5. I double check that 15 plus 5 is 20. I have 20 equals 20, which is a true statement. For the second question, the same thing. 9 minus 6. 9 minus 6 is 3, and since 3 equals 3, that is true. So I know I have the correct answers. We will also throw in decimals. 4.2x. That's the same as 4.2 times x. So to get rid of the multiplication, I'm going to divide by 4.2 on both sides. Because 4.2 divided by 4.2 is 1, which leaves me with just x on the left side of my equation. Then I do negative 52.5 divided by 4.2. I get negative 12.5. Now you'll see it says to check your solution. So I go back to the original equation for my check. Instead of x, I'm going to plug in that negative 12.5. And I'm going to make sure that if I do negative 12.5 times 4.2, that I get negative 52.5, which I do, which means I have a true statement and I have the right answer. All right, go ahead and pause. I want you to try this one on your own. All right, so that 5.6 is attached to x, which is multiplication. The opposite is division. So we're going to divide by 5.6 on both sides. Negative 19.6 divided by 5.6 is negative 3.5. 5.6 divided by 5.6 gives me 1. So I'm left with just the 1x, or x. If I wanted to check, I'd make sure that 5.6 times negative 3.5 gets me the negative 19.6. All right, you will see we have fractions. So this says 16 equals negative 1/4 b. I want to get rid of this negative 1/4. The opposite of multiplying by a negative 1/4 is multiplying by the reciprocal, which is flipping that fraction negative 4/1. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 4/1. Because a negative times a negative is a positive, I could cross simplify the 4's and I end up with just 1b. On the left side, I have negative 4 times 16, which is negative 64. On the bottom, I have 1 times 1, which is 1, which would simplify to just negative 64 equals b. With fractions, I would suggest checking and making sure that negative 1/4 times that negative 64 gets you 16. So you basically are doing 64 divided by 4 here. And that does get me 16/1. Negative times negative is a positive. So go ahead and multiply that back by to make sure you simplify correctly. So I always flip the fraction attached to the variable. So because the negative 4/3 is attached to x, multiplying by the reciprocal of negative 4/3, which is negative 3/4. So I get s on the left, because that would cross simplify. Negative times negative is a positive. I would simplify the 4's here, and these are both divisible by 3 to get negative 1. And 3, we have a negative. Negative times negative would be a positive. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. So s is 1/3. Again, we could check by making sure that negative 4/3 times 1/3 gives me that negative 4/9, which it does. Sometimes you'll have to simplify a step before you can solve your problem. So here on the left, I have negative 2 times 6y. I'd make that negative 12y equals 144. So I'm going to simplify first. Now I have negative 12 times y. The opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by negative 12. I get negative 12. If you need to plug that back in, you can do negative 2, 6, negative 12 equals 144. I get negative 2 times negative 72. Negative times negative is a positive. 72 times 2 is 144. So my check worked out. Over here on our second question, 5p minus 2p. 5 minus 2 would be 3p equals negative 12. We divide by 3 on both sides because that 3 is attached to the p or being multiplied. P equals negative 4. Again, you can substitute that back in. 5 times negative 4 minus 2 times negative 4. You should get negative 12. Email me if you have any other questions, and have a great day.